This episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. What's going on, everybody? As we all know, mental health is a huge piece for me. And recently, as I become a better version of myself, I've decided that it's time for me to go to therapy because I understand how life can be a little overwhelming and we all need help navigating through the trenches of military service in and out of uniform. BetterHelp connects you with a licensed therapist who is trained to listen and give you helpful, unbiased advice. First, all you got to do is go to their site. Matter of fact, you can use my link right here. Answer a few questions and BetterHelp will match you with a professional who has years of experience in helping people with struggles just like yours. You can do it all from your phone or computer via phone call or video chat or messaging, however you feel most comfortable. It's the easiest possible way to start talking to a therapist. You will be matched to a therapist usually within 48 hours so you can get started fast. Let BetterHelp connect you to a therapist who can support you all from the comfort of your home. Visit betterhelp.com/meechspeaks and enjoy a special discount on your first month.
I want to say something. A prize, motherfucker.
Leave me alone. Go out west. Give me your phone. Blow it out west.
What's going on, everybody? It's that ordinary podcaster with the extraordinary thoughts that tells you to stop being great and be extraordinary. I'm Demetrius Thigpen, also known as Meech Speaks, and welcome back to another episode of the Talking Crazy podcast. Now, before we get started with this podcast, head on over to your favorite streaming platform, whether that's Apple Podcasts or Spotify Podcasts, and leave this podcast an honest review, because this podcast deserves to grow just as much as we do. Good morning, everybody. Happy Monday. You know, I'm going to just be honest with you. When I say happy Monday, do I sound fake? Like, do I sound like a generic? I could be overthinking. I honestly could be overthinking. But I'm going to just be honest with you. I'm going to keep it a buck. The happy Monday, does it sound like a fucking generic thing to say? Like, does it sound like something that like a social media guru would say, or like one of those like self-help podcasters? Like, is that something that they would say? Like, please, like, text me, DM me, email me. Like, if I'm overthinking, then just let me know if I'm overthinking. But are we fucking with the good morning, good happy Monday, everybody? Are we fucking with that? Or is that one of those things where it's just like, hey, Meech, you could take that out. But I promise you, right? If you tell me that sounded fake and we've been doing that for how many episodes now? How many episodes have we been doing Happy Monday, everybody? I hope your week is going well. I hope your day goes well. I hope your month is going. How long have we been doing that? You know? And if that's been sounding fake, guys, like, why have y'all been letting me do this? But with that being said, email me, text me, DM me. Let me know that it's not the move. But anyways, so I recently got a chance to sit back and talk to somebody that had been really fucking with the podcast for a while. And I'm going to just tell y'all, like, when you tell me that you've been fucking with the podcast for a minute, the episode resonates or video resonates, it really means a lot because of the simple fact that there was a time when I didn't even think that any of this would resonate with anyone. You know, I thought that I was just talking about myself and it just would be something that I never thought would take off. You know what I mean? But I stuck with it and I just kept putting it out, and it really means a lot that somebody or so many people actually are really fucking with it. But as we were sitting back, he was telling me about a recent episode that I put out, and it was last week's episode, and he was telling me about how the episode really resonated, and then you add in the most recent video that I dropped, and he just said, like, man, like, just keep doing what you're doing. And I was like, brother, like, you don't even understand, dude. Like, I really, really appreciate that. You know what I mean? And then he said, like, hey, Meech, when are you going to, bring back the smoking videos? And I was like, what are you talking about? He's like, you remember when you used to sit in your car and you used to smoke a cigarette and like a motivational quote would play over it? Like, when you going to bring those back? I really love those. And I said, brother, bro, look, I can't. I don't smoke cigarettes no more. Now, before we get started, I'm going to just tell y'all right now, I didn't quit smoking cigarettes because of some like health reason. You know what I mean? Like, this is not the part where I just tell you, like, I decided to make like a big life change and, start making small changes with it. No, that's not, no. That didn't happen. No, I quit smoking cigarettes because I'm on recruiting duty. Okay. I couldn't walk into a fucking school smelling like a damn ashtray. I I couldn't do a class talk and get in front of a classroom and I smell like I just walked out of a bar. I couldn't get in front of parents and you could smell it on me. Like you could smell it on my uniform, you could smell it on my skin, you could smell it on my hands. Like I just couldn't smell like cigarettes around people like that. It was great around Marines, you know what I mean? Because nobody would say anything. I was in a motor pool. Everybody was smoking cigarettes, you know what I mean? So it wasn't a big deal. But out here, it's definitely one of those, I don't want him in my office. It stinks. And God forbid somebody tell me that I stink. I am not about to go for that. So I decided that if I really wanted to be successful out here and make a positive impact, then I definitely need to put my best foot forward. And I decided that one of those things was to take cigarettes off the table. Now, for those who know, cigarettes used to be a big thing into me. And I will say that reaping the benefits of not smoking have been, it's been crazy, like I can taste again, I can smell again, I can breathe again, and when I say I can breathe, I'm not short-winded all the time, I've been able to just essentially just do the things that most people normally would do, but, because I'm already an extraordinary individual, you feel me, I'm doing it at such a high caliber, but it really was able to be the catalyst for today's episode because this has been something that was on my mind and I just couldn't figure out exactly how I could articulate it in a way that it would come off well. But with that being said, let's go ahead and get started with today's episode because today's episode is all about the habits that you make within your life, whether they're good or bad. Are they building you up or are they tearing you down? Let's go ahead and get started. Now, one thing that I have learned about habits is that they're like a snowball rolling downhill. The more consistency that you add to the habit, meaning the more that you do it, is the more momentum that is going to pick up. Now, one of the biggest things that you have to ask yourself is this habit good or is this habit bad? You know what I mean? Like, is this a good snowball or is this a bad snowball? But before we even dive into this episode, the one question that we have to ask ourselves is, what is a habit? And for those who don't understand what a habit is, it is a routine or behavior that you do on autopilot. Now, what does that mean? That means that there's no real thought in when you do it. You just it's almost like blinking. It's almost like breathing. It's almost like, it's just the norm for you. You know what I mean? Like the same way that you don't have to tell yourself to blink, the same way that you don't have to tell yourself to breathe. You don't necessarily have to tell yourself to really do it. It's already been integrated within your life. Now, a good example of this is when I was smoking cigarettes. The moment that I woke up and I got in the car, I'm already about to smoke a cigarette. I drive to work, I sit there for a little bit because I usually would get there very early and I would already smoke another cigarette. I would start my day, I would go ahead, start my day, shit, shower, shave, come outside, smoke another cigarette. Start the drill, do the drill, come back, smoke another cigarette. Go through the day, smoke probably 2 other cigarettes, one before I went on lunch and then one after I came back from lunch. And then go in there, spar. After sparring, smoke another cigarette. Drive home. While I'm driving home, guess what I'm doing? I'm probably smoking a cigarette there. I would get home, and when I would decompress, as I'm decompressing, getting that work off of me, I'm smoking a cigarette. Go in, eat dinner, relax for a little bit. Before I even go to bed, guess what I'm going to go do? I'm going to go smoke a cigarette. And you can see how many times I'm doing it and how big of a piece that is within my life. Now, when we talk about habits, you also got to take into consideration there's 3 ways that a habit is formed. First is the cue. What is the catalyst to this? Like, what is the starting point for it? For me, when I first started smoking cigarettes, I was having girl trouble. I'm going to be completely honest with you. All right. I was dealing with my high school sweetheart and we were going through a breakup. I was in the field. She was back in Detroit and I was just stressed the fuck out. So I picked a cigarette up and I just started smoking. So right out the gate, the cue for me is that when I'm stressed, angry, upset, whatever, I'm going to smoke a cigarette. So anytime that I would get one of those things, I would just go smoke a cigarette. Soon, that would just become a big part into my life. Now, let's talk about the routine. So now, when I'm stressed out or angry or upset, I'm going to smoke a cigarette. Guess where I'm at on a regular basis? I'm in the fucking Marine Corps. So these things are going to happen on a regular basis for me. I'm going to be stressed. I'm going to be upset. I'm going to have a moment where I might need to go smoke a cigarette. And soon that becomes a intricate piece within my life because I'm doing it very consistently. Now I'm no longer just stressed out. I'm just, all right, well, it's time for me to drive to work. Okay, so I know I need to smoke a cigarette. Okay, I just ate, so now I need to go smoke a cigarette. I'm tired. I'm about to go to bed. All right, before I go to bed, I'm going to go smoke a cigarette real quick. And the one thing that I've learned is that your initial cue may not be the consistent cue. It may not always be that cue. Like, it's just going to just start evolving into other cues where you're like, okay, well, this would be a good time to go do it too. Now, the last piece about that is the reward aspect. Now, I knew that smoking would calm me down, and it felt a certain relief after smoking a cigarette, especially when you're stressed out. And I would just that would be my reward for it. After eating, if you've ever smoked a cigarette after eating a meal, you reach a state of full that you have never been to. Like, it's like a period at the end of a fucking sentence. If you're driving and you're just like, you know what, man, like, you ever smoked a cigarette while you fucking driving? Dog, oh my God, man, you chilling. You know what I mean? Music's playing, you just having a good time. You ever had a drink while you smoking a cigarette? The Crown on ice, and you just having a nice cigarette. You ever had coffee and you smoking a cigarette? I'm sorry. It's been 3 months, okay? Please bear with me, man. Like, I'm doing the best I can, but that was a big piece within my life. And I say that it was a big piece within my life. One of the things that I've learned is because, and this is like a compound fact, is that the more that you do it, right, the harder that it is. Let me rephrase that. The more that you do it, the easier it is for it to integrate within your life. The problem is that it's so hard to quit or change a habit because you have done it so consistently. You know, if you've ever talked to anybody that's ever tried to like change a habit or remove a habit out of their lives, it's very hard because their bodies is almost like, yo, like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, we're missing something. Like, I kind of feel like we're missing something. And there are so many triggering aspects to it where it's just like, okay, well, I see that person smoking cigarettes, so I need to go smoke a cigarette, or we just ate, so I need to. That's been a big piece right there. And I say that because that's something that a lot of people do. Now, I'm using a bad example. Are there good habits? 100%. There are good habits. And a good example of good habits is, one, standing up for yourself when when you need to. You know, speaking up for yourself when you normally wouldn't, that's a good habit. Another good habit is waking up early, you know, whether that's to get your day started or just for personal growth. And for those who don't understand what personal growth actually looks like, going to the gym, you know, sitting in your living room, drinking a cup of coffee, realigning for the day, refocusing for the day, recalibrating for the day. That's a good habit, you know? A good habit, integrating positive self-talk within your life. Those are good habits. And one thing that I have learned is that it doesn't always have to be these monumental things to be able to create a habit. All you got to do is just do small things, like just taking a small piece out of your day and just adding it in there. Like, small accomplishments will lead to major accomplishments over time. And when I say small accomplishments will lead to major accomplishments, a good example is just this overall podcast, dude. When I first started podcasting, man, I was podcasting in a closet with a gaming headset, an Android phone, and an app, you know? And I would just show up every Monday and every Friday. Yeah, for those who just started listening, we used to podcast like two times a week. Every Monday and every Friday. And I would edit and I would do those episodes. And because I just kept going with it, now here we are in a studio. Now here we are with our audience. Now here we are having a conversation with somebody who says that the episodes, they're really fucking with them. So that was just a small piece. Another small piece, and we all know that, you know, it's just integrating just basic Marine Corps shit into our lives. You know, it didn't start out like that, but over time, it just became such a big piece within. Let me phrase that. We did it so much that it became a big piece within our lives. So when I tell you, it doesn't take like this big thing to turn it into a habit. It's just doing it consistently. just doing a small thing consistently over and over will build up into that big snowball that eventually just becomes that habit within your life. Now, if there's good habits, right, there's gotta be bad habits. Now, we already know smoking is a bad habit, all right? That's a bad habit for me. Do I look cool? 100%. Did I enjoy it? Yeah, but in reality, was it a bad habit? 100%, you know? I was constantly always tired. I was always out of breath. I couldn't smell a fucking thing. I couldn't taste anything, you know? I constantly smelled like a fucking ashtray all the time, you know? So that's a good example of a bad habit, but seriously, a bad habit will drain you. It will lead to, little to no momentum in your life. It will cause, self-doubt within your life, depending on what that type of habit is. So a good example of a bad habit is procrastination, overindulging. And I remember there was a point in my life, and what's so funny is that this is a point that many people within the military have dealt with before, is the drinking. And for a lot of us, we didn't know how to drink before we came into the military. And I was one of those. I just really didn't know how to drink. And because I was able to get to liquor once I turned 21, I was able to get to liquor faster, easier, whatever I wanted to. And nobody was telling me how to drink, when to stop. It just developed into such a bad situation. Now, just like what I said in the very beginning, cue, routine, reward, right? I would always drink before I went out to a social gathering, because I felt like I needed to have a drink in order to have a good time, to loosen up, to have a little bit more confidence, you know what I mean? That's when I would definitely drink. And the cue was, all right, boom, I knew that it's time for me to go out, you know what I mean? And we're about to hang out, so I need to pregame, all right? The routine, all right? Anytime that we go out, I know I need to drink. So now I'm about to drink. And the reward is that now I got the confidence. I'm a lot more loose. I'm about to hang out. I would do that. Man, I did that before balls. I did that before mess nights. I've done that before social gatherings. I've done that on so many occasions. If I'm about to go to a club or a kickback or just a lounge, I'm about to go do these things. And what made me really get my drinking under control was when I overindulged for a mess night. I had an hour to get to the mess night. I still had to get my uniforms together, and I still had to pregame. That was the math that I had put in my head. So while I'm getting my uniforms together, I'm pounding wine. I didn't even have enough time to get liquor. I was pounding glasses of wine. Now, the moment that I said wine, if you've ever really drank wine, you know that wine isn't something that you will immediately get drunk from. It's something that it's an overtime thing, right? So as soon as the people that came to pick me up, they handed me a beer. I shotgunned a beer. Bang. Now I head on over to the mess night. As soon as we get into the mess night, I already get 2 glasses of liquor. One of them from somebody that I don't even know who it was. I just drank out of their cup. Now, I'm sitting down. That wine that I had drank earlier has now activated, along with the beer and liquor that's in my system. Needless to say, I threw up by the end of that night. Now, I actually got put out, and I ended up just showing my ass. And I bring that story up because that was the moment where I told myself, yo, all right, you kind of need to get your shit together. This is embarrassing. And it was so embarrassing because so many people were talking to me about just how they had such a high expectation for me. And that piece right there, that habit got so out of control that it came to light in front of everybody. So when I tell you that bad habits can really drag you down, they really can drag you down. So now that we know what a bad habit is and what an example of a bad habit is, how do we break a bad habit? First things first is that it's got to be awareness. You got to have some type of awareness. There's got to be a moment where you got to realize okay, this, what I'm doing right now is self-destructive. This, what I'm doing is dragging me down. This, what I'm doing is destructive. This, what I'm doing is fucking embarrassing. And for me, it was the drinking, okay? It was definitely the drinking, all right? When I realized that I embarrassed myself in front of my entire platoon, company, and battalion, I was like, all right, we need to get this shit together. Another example, once again, going back to the smoking. The awareness was realizing that the cigarette smell was very unattractive to everyone else. You know what I mean? Like, I didn't give a fuck about it. But when I'm walking into a school and I'm about to preach about the world's finest organization, telling everybody that they should join and they have to cover their noses, that's kind of off-putting. When I'm trying to have a conversation with a teacher and the only thing that she can smell is the fact that I smell like fucking cigarettes, that's kind of off-putting. You know, when I'm having a conversation about to a parent and I'm telling them that, you know, you should let your child join the Marine Corps, but I smell like a fucking ashtray and you can smell it all over me, it's kind of off-putting. So there's a moment where you have to realize, like, all right, boom, I got to stop doing this. Now, the next step is to replace, never erase. You want to find a good way to relapse? You want to find a fast way to relapse? Take a habit out of your life and don't replace it with something else. Don't replace it with something that is either equivalent or something else that will occupy that time, energy, or fucking mindset. I promise you right there, you're going to fucking relapse, all right? You want me to tell you how many times I've relapsed smoking cigarettes just trying to quit cold turkey, all right? Realizing that on my way to work, it's kind of feeling lonely. After a meal, I don't feel full again. There's so much downtime within my life that I normally used to fill up with a cigarette. Next thing you know, I'm back smoking cigarettes again because I miss it. God, I miss it. I miss it so much. So when I made the decision to quit smoking cigarettes, I didn't erase it. I replaced it. And what I replaced it with, gum. I also started vaping, okay? Yes, I vape now. I know. I hate it too, all right? I'm walking around with a fucking geek bar. And yeah, I don't smell like cigarettes anymore. You know, I'm getting small dosages of nicotine, but because I can do it so frequently and excessively, I actually don't do it that often. You know what I mean? Like, I don't step outside to go smoke a cigarette. I don't have to really smoke a cigarette after I'm eating. It doesn't even feel the same. You know, I might drive to work and I might hit the vape a couple of times, but you can't hit it the same way. You can't hit a vape the same way that you hit a cigarette. And because I replaced it with something else instead of erasing it, it also allowed me to really change the entire trajectory of how I was actually utilizing that habit. So now I'm able to do this in less dosages. And I would say the next step is just stop vaping and just chewing gum. After chewing gum, then I'll stop chewing gum and just quit completely cold turkey. But the one thing that I've realized is that to try to completely erase it instead of just replacing it with something less than and just constantly, you know, doing a replace after a replace after a replace, that is easier than just erasing because you're just going to end up fucking relapsing. I promise you that. Now, don't get me wrong. There's some strong-willed people. I went clean cold turkey for 8 months straight, but the first major stressor in my life ignited that cue all over again. The next step is starting small. And I will always say this, start small. Like, one of the biggest things is that if you try to change a major habit within your life and you do it in a large way, that's not how the habit was formed. You know what I mean? Like, that's not how the habit was formed. And if you try to do it the opposite of how the habit was formed, you're just going to revert back to the habit. The habit was formed through small things over time. If you try to do large things over time, then it's just going to become a hassle. It's going to just be something where you're just not able to do frequently. So a good example is me just replacing cigarettes with vaping, you know, and then over time replacing vaping with just chewing gum. These aren't major things. These aren't something major that I'm doing. It's something that would have taken the exact same amount of time. It's just not as potent as it was then. And because of those small changes, it's going to allow me to be able to do something bigger. And then lastly, having accountability. You know, now that I've told everybody, if somebody sees me smoking a cigarette, they're probably going to break it up. Oh, Meech, I thought you quit smoking cigarettes. People at my office already know that I don't smoke cigarettes anymore. You know, people within my life already know that I don't smoke cigarettes anymore. So if they see me smoking a cigarette, it's going to get brought up. And one thing that I don't like is when people bring up shit about me. You know, I don't need you checking me about my life. So when they bring that up, that's going to keep me honest. I will say this, though. Having somebody within your life that's going to keep you honest and make sure that you're not smoking, or let me rephrase that, conducting yourself or engaging in that bad habit is going to be key, because I'm going to be honest. You're going to talk your way out of some things. You're going to convince yourself that the bad habit that you were doing, it's not necessarily, you know, it's bad. Or hear me out, the good habits that you're starting to incorporate in your life, you're going to try to talk yourself out of those. You're going to try to tell yourself that those good habits aren't working, that they are taking up too much time. You're going to need to have somebody in your life that's also on that track as well. That will keep you honest. If you're starting to incorporate going to the gym, always have an accountability partner. Have a gym partner. You know what I mean? Somebody that's going to be like this, hey, we going to the gym today. You know, if you're trying to start a podcast, having somebody say like, hey, man, like, don't forget you got to record or you got to do this. If you're trying to do something good within your life, I'm telling you, have somebody in there that can keep you honest and hold your hand to the fucking fire. But most importantly, habits aren't just some thing that you do. They're building blocks in your life. They're also a preview of who you're going to become, whether those are good or bad. I understand. Breaking a bad habit can be fucking hard. All right. It can feel like as if the world's going to feel like it's against you. You're going to feel like you're missing something. Incorporating a good habit in your life is hard. It can be hard. You're going to feel like it's a hassle at the beginning. But I promise you, man, like if you stick with it, you're going to look back on that and say like, damn, man, like I've completely changed for the better.
And just like that, another extraordinary thought left this ordinary mind. I hope you enjoyed this episode half as much as I enjoyed making it. Don't forget to head on over to your favorite streaming platform, whether that's Apple Podcasts or Spotify Podcasts, and leave this podcast an honest review because this podcast deserves to grow just as much as we do. Also, don't forget to head on over to TikTok or Instagram and follow me at Meech Speaks. That's right, Meech Speaks. Meech is spelled Meech. Stay motivated, stay healthy. I'm out.